is always the best way to propose something to the town instead of asking it with a certain amount of money attached to it. So again, we're trying to do our due diligence to spend what we have to, but without spending it to see it affect the tax rate.
So John, you don't think you'd have the warrant article finalized by next Thursday then?
We might, but I just don't. From the meeting last night, we went over it. Was the first part of that we saw that what Chris sent us. We had a brief discussions and stuff like that on it. I think, but I can get back to you and let you know if we'll have it, if that's something where we're ready to put in front, or if there was one more thing we had to do.
Okay, so at this point, it sounds like potentially having the highway department come present if we have those warrant articles finalized and our new police chief. But again, I don't want to hold a meeting just to have the police chief introduce herself to us if that's going to be the only thing on our agenda.
Agree.
So, John, I guess I'll just wait to hear from you early. We'll plan to have our meeting next Thursday, January 7th as planned, unless any of those pieces change, or if there's other items we need to add to the agenda after the meeting tonight.
Sounds good.
All right. Any other questions on the remaining schedule? I know some of you are, this is your first year on the committee, so just understanding the public hearing process is an opportunity again for the public to attend those meetings if they want and ask questions. And then at the deliberative sessions is when the public can actually make motions to change individual warrant articles, the wording and the wording articles, as well as the budget. So at the public hearing, that's not the format for that. It's at the deliberative sessions, which will be the following week. So.
And is this all going to be virtual?
That's yet to be decided, Tom. I know they're working on it right now. I know as of we last knew it was going to be physical, but I know I don't think that's been finalized. John, you could actually probably speak to that better than I can as far as the town.
As Mr. Reed is on, I see here, we just got some emails today about stuff, which again, I was just briefly reading over. I haven't quite dove into it enough about what the state says on how that's going to work out. So we will have an answer exactly how that's going to work out. Sorry, Gene, that I didn't get to finish reading what you sent. I just looked at it a couple minutes ago from what Chris sent me, from what you sent him. So again, I can't speak too much about it because I didn't dive into the details enough.
May I comment?
Sure.
There's what John is referring to is that the state passed a law, a temporary law because of COVID, about how the meetings will take place, both for SB2 and for the traditional town meetings. And what it states is quite interesting and complex, but there appears to be that there will not be an opportunity to review via Zoom or in person the proposed warrant articles, which is, I don't know who the chair is of the Budget Committee, but I would advise John, if you would, John, to forward that to your fellow Budget Committee members. And it's not an opinion of mine, it's the law which I've provided to everybody. When I say everybody, that was the Board of Selectmen. It's confusing. It's a tradition that's being usurped by the events of COVID. And it warrants everybody in town, not only the Budget Committee, to read it, because some of our privilege, not our privileges, but our rights are being infringed upon, in that we will not be able to amend or discuss the warrant articles in a public meeting. I'll leave it at that, John. I wish you'd forward that to the rest of the committee members. They haven't digested it.
I didn't even get it. I saw it. I started reading it, but it was a lot more complex than that's why I didn't finish.
Yeah, it is. It is. It's a mess. And I've talked to Bonnie, the moderator, about it, and she expects the AG, Attorney General, the AG's office, to come out with some more rulings on it after the first of the year. So to assume that we're going to be able to discuss it at a deliberative session is to assume that is premature. Thank you for letting me speak.
You're welcome. And Gene, so the budget committee doesn't have control over that process. It's the two legislative bodies, the school board as well as the select board, that controls that. From my understanding, that process, we just show up wherever we're supposed to be, whether it be virtual or in person.
Well, as a citizen, you might be interested, and you misstated the fact that the legislative bodies of the school board and the selectmen, they are the governing boards. We are the citizens of the legislative board.
You are correct. Sorry. So John, if you want to forward that out to all of us, that'd be great.
At the end of the meeting, I'll be happy to take care of that.
Sure. All right. With that, I think we can introduce our guests. Sue Levinson, I think I'll let you do the introductions and an overview of what we're going to discuss here. But just to let everybody, we're reviewing the proposed bond or the proposed expansion of the school, which would be on a bond, and that hearing would be again on January 13th at 6:30 p.m. Today, they're going to present sort of the design and overall costs, and we can ask our questions of the construction group. So take it away, Sue.
Hi, thank you. So I would just like to introduce the team that we have here this evening. We have Preston Hunter from Ekman Construction, Chris Solomon from Salmondalia Architects. We have got Chris Sousa, who's the principal at Nottingham School. Nate Byrne, I see, Student Services Director. We have Monica Henson, the interim superintendent, and of course, Carol Martin is a member of the budget committee representing the school board. And so tonight we thought what we could do is just kind of show you where we are at this point with the design, where we are with costs at this time. We do tentatively, we haven't posted yet for the bond hearing. We need to ensure that the language is accurate on that. So bond counsel will have to look at that. So that will probably occur hopefully this week or by January 4th. So there are a lot of details to work through on that. And then just to Mr. Reed's point, we had a meeting today and Mr. Reed is right. There's a lot of complexity around the deliberative sessions, and it calls for 2 sessions, and you don't get the same level of discourse, obviously. So that is something that I think both of the governing boards are trying to understand completely. So moving on to the school addition and renovation, we have a website that is not launched, but it does speak to some of the deficiencies that we have currently in the school. So we'd like to start with that. I don't know if you have you all seen that section?
Yes.
Okay. So I think I'm going to let Mr. Sousa is here. I'm going to let him lead on that piece because he's in the school every day. But essentially, we do still have we have made renovations to the building. We have taken maintenance closets, we've added windows to them. We've used every square inch of space that we can. And some years ago, we had proposed a building addition and the community was not ready for it. They asked us to please go back and to address academics. And we've done that. I think our academics speak for themselves at this point. The kids are doing really well. Their testing is very good at this point. And so we addressed that. We added the things that we needed to add and focused on academics, but we can't really do any additional programming right now. We still have students in the hallways being educated, and I'll let Chris speak to the details. So this is what we're seeking to address.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for having us here. We've worked hard over the last 7 years or so to maximize as much space as we can in the building. We're very proud of the fact that we are one of the top schools in the state, typically in the top 25, 30% overall districts or less, top 5 for middle schools. And we've continued to attract other schools to our school to see how we do it. We base our education on personalized education, finding out what individual students need, and then adapting quickly to address that and assess it and then readdress it. It's core to our principles, and we've really maximized that. However, as much as when people come to our school and they comment often about the climate and the culture and the positivity, as well as the practices we do, they are remarked about how we are maximizing space. Currently, some of our specialists who work with students, and they don't just work with one special area of students, they work with many of our students. It crosses all different educational needs, but they're doubling up in some rather small spaces. Some of them were closets that we turned into classrooms or individual office spaces. Sometimes we're doing that in hallway spaces where they can find opportunity to meet with kids. If you look on that website, you will see there's a brief map that does kind of point out some of the current deficiencies we've had. In order to meet programming, we've wind up revamping some of the programs that we currently or had in the past, such as our computer lab. And we needed some of that space, so we revamped it. And now technology is taught on a cart, which is obviously less than ideal when you're talking about trying to have students become more proficient with modern technology, particularly the software and the programs that we know they're going to need for the future. We have health on a cart. We have, students going from small individual office spaces for tutoring or for any other type of classroom space, walking across the building to get to back to their classroom space or to another hallway intervention. Storage is a huge issue. We are storing our paper outside, which is not ideal. And what we've done to answer those questions around storage is we just continue to add more sheds. And now we're leasing a storage container. We had a great price for that. But again, these are really temporary objectives or temporary solutions to some of our objectives around space. We are in our gymnasium, which we've done a really nice job taking care of. Our locker rooms are used for storage. So there really limits the use that you can have in the locker rooms for students. I would think that overall, when we think about how we want to expand programs, how we would like to just continue the programs we have and develop them deeper, such as our science programs and our STEM programs and our technology programs. We're not looking to add program necessarily with this addition, although it was only accomplished that, as much as we also want to make sure that we can continue to do what we're doing. But as the world and education changes, we need the space to do that. Our teachers are doing exceptional work in our building, and they're working hard in spaces that, overall are less than ideal, with no complaints, mind you.
So I think just in summary, we currently have when we repurposed rooms to really handle some of our student services concerns that we had to take away our computer room. So that is now on a cart. We have our health, which is a required piece of our programming, on a cart. So there are some areas that we're doing the best we can. So I see we've got the program, the plans up here.
Yeah.
So maybe Chris and Preston could kind of walk through what we're looking to add and to renovate. The other thing I would like to mention to you is that we currently are paying $185,000 a year for a preschool program that is in Northwood. They do a good job with our students. However, they're in 720 square feet total, 2 360 square foot rooms, and we're paying $185,000 for that. One of the things that we would like to do is to have preschool and our child find programming back at our school, and this addition will allow us to do that. So in terms of the layout, did either Chris or Preston maybe want to just walk through the areas that will be touched in this?
I can walk through the plans. Just to kind of summarize also what we've been up to for the last year and a half. In the kind of the first phase of the project up till last year at this time, we developed the concept plans, really defined the need for the project. We've met with the community, as you all know. We had public hearings to hear what everybody wanted in the buildings and what the need was. Over this past summer, we prepared and submitted the state building aid application. So that went into Amy Clark at the Department of Education. That application, typically in non-COVID years, we would know in December who was on the short list and who's not. That has been delayed. So we'll know after the March bond vote if we're going to be getting a reimbursement. The community would be eligible for a 30% reimbursement. But as of right now, we won't know that until after the bond vote. So I can jump in. I don't know if Preston, if you.
Yeah, I'm happy to. It might be helpful for some of the committee members just to walk through the current floor plan, and because I'm not sure how familiar folks are with some of the issues that we're trying to address with this project. But yeah, Tim, if you click on that other tab, that'll actually show. Yeah, so all of the areas in red are essentially areas that are being addressed. This is a floor plan of your existing school. The second floor classroom wing is shown on the left, and the larger floor plan is on the, yeah, there we go. Maybe just, yeah, sure, we can just kind of go like that. So if you want to just start in a corner, Tim, we can kind of step through a few different areas. And like it was mentioned earlier, this is available on the website. It's nottinghamschoolproject.com. So you can go there and get more familiar. But essentially, there's a number of different areas that Mr. Sousa had identified are issues. What we're seeing right here, if we start from the right, the boys and girls locker rooms are essentially athletic equipment storage rooms right now. From what I understand, they're not really able to use them. So that was a priority, was actually recovering some storage space to allow the students to use the athletic locker rooms for sports and PE classes. If you scroll down just a little bit, Tim, you'll see in the corner of the cafeteria is where your music room is. This music room is pretty undersized for the program. And when you combine equipment storage, instrument storage in that space, it gets even smaller. And so one of the goals of the project was to build a new music room that's actually sized and designed for that use with the equipment or with the instrument storage. This music room in the plan actually becomes a health room. Currently, you do not have a health classroom. It's provided off of a cart that travels to different classrooms in your school. As you go to the left, a teacher's room right there that's shown in red is currently subdivided. You can kind of see the two curriculum director's office and this special ed secretary office. Those have been repurposed. Basically, that space has been taken away from the teachers in order to provide those offices. In this plan, that gets brought back to the original design, and those offices have their own dedicated spaces. Security is always an important part of any renovation project, and the plans also address access and security in the main entrance. So there's a reconfiguration of the main office in order to allow the secretary to actually visually identify visitors before they're buzzed in. And so that's what's being shown there at the main entrance. As you continue to kind of move to the left there, you have the kindergarten classroom right on the corner. That would actually become the new STEM classroom and computer lab. You don't currently have a computer lab. That was, I believe, taken over for other uses as the student body grew. So that kindergarten would be moved to a new addition, which we can talk about next. So that'll be a great space for science and innovation and project-based learning in that room. Just to the left of that is the art room, and there's actually the Title I office is being housed in the storage closet of your art room right now. So that would have a new space, and the art teacher would gain back their storage. Across the hall, that kindergarten classroom as well would be relocated to a new addition, and that space gets repurposed into a number of different rooms that you'll see on the new plan. And there are a few other spaces around the library as well that get repurposed and renovated in the new plan. So as you move into the classroom wing there on the first floor, one of the goals of the project was to have 3 dedicated classrooms for each grade level. Currently, I believe it's the 4th grade maybe right now, but I think it rotates throughout the year. But currently, at least one grade level only has 2 classes. And so kind of whoever the smallest grade is squeezed into 2 classes. And you have that kindergarten classroom sort of in the middle. So that kindergarten classroom would be moved to the new addition, and that space would again be able to provide 3 dedicated classrooms for each grade level again. Across, if you kind of continue to, you can see there's a highlight in the hallway right outside of the stair. That's like a little area that currently is being used, I think, as a pull-out space for students right there in the hall. There's some photos on the website too that show that. Just to Mr. Seuss's point about how every nook and cranny is right now being used. The stairs as well, I think, are also being used for similar pull-out spaces. For special education and other uses. And as you move to the left a little bit more there, Tim, you can see what's going on the 2nd floor. So those 2 small spaces that are called special ed breakout, those are currently janitor's closets and a data closet that's being used for student spaces. The one on the left has custodial supplies, mop sink, and a small table in there for students and teachers to meet in kind of one-on-one settings. And likewise, across the hall, that's where it looks like you have some data equipment and some other equipment in there. It's a closet that's basically being used for some student space. So that's kind of a quick run through of the issues and areas that I think the plan is trying to address. And yeah, Chris, if do you want to try to walk through the proposed, or if there's any questions from the committee? I don't know if we want to take a break and folks can ask questions if they need to. All right, well, why don't we show the proposed plan then? And people can.
You have the ones that I sent you, or could you share the screen? Because I have all the civil plans and such as well. How do we? I think you have to return ownership of sharing.
So if you make Chris the host, Tim, that might work.
I think he should be able to share.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Yep. All right. So we've gone through kind of the proposed, or excuse me, the renovation plan. So we'll kind of start on the same side of the page and work our way over. Overall, we've kind of classified the renovations as really limited scope renovations to kind of just repurposing a classroom, some more involved interior renovations of reconfiguring interior walls without any major disruptions, and then new additions. So those are kind of the 3 colors. The greens would be some more minor renovations and really just kind of repurposing the classrooms. So over to the right side of the page, this was the existing music classroom, we've repurposed that to be a new health classroom, which you guys currently don't have. So we'll be using that classroom for health. It's also a nice connection to the cafeteria and the gymnasium for classroom instruction as well. Moving down the page, the teachers' rooms, we've just returned that back to what its original design was intended for. There was a partition put up across the middle of the classroom. We're looking to take that back out and give the teachers the space needed for both, their break room, printing copies, etc. Over at the main entrance, we're going to upgrade the main entrance so that when people come into the school, they have access and you have visual and physical control of them as they come into the school. They can come in, meet in the conference room, and then leave. And at no point do they ever actually need to enter the school. So currently they have to come through these doors into the school to have access into the admin area. We want to prohibit that. So we're going to be upgrading the security at the main entrance. This existing kindergarten classroom becomes your new STEM lab. We've kept your existing library intact and just really returned these existing offices to the left and to the right of the library back to what they're originally intended for. We have some interior renovations to these existing special education departments to reconfigure those to better suit their needs. As well as down here, this is another kindergarten classroom that we've reconfigured as both circulation access to the new addition and also providing you the breakout space needed for the small group instruction. And really the main concept to this plan is adding on 3 new kindergarten classrooms and a preschool classroom. And the reason why we've added on kindergarten classrooms versus a 3rd grade or 4th grade classroom is those classrooms there's specific size requirements and amenities that are required by the state for those classrooms, which your current facilities don't provide. So we would repurpose those as general classrooms so that we're really limiting the amount of renovations needed in those spaces and adding on 3 new kindergarten classrooms off the back of the school. This sets the school up so that each grade has 3 classrooms per grade. So it sets you up for the next, say, 10, 15 years of population growth so that you can meet the needs of the community and also keep your classrooms down to the sizes that you desire. We have off the library to keep the library and this existing infrastructure in place. We've created an outdoor courtyard. Off of that, we also have an enrichment classroom and then a new preschool classroom. At the back of the school would be a new entrance so that in the morning we can have the buses enter in on one side of the school and the parents on the other. And the students can have an actual entrance coming into the school without having that crossing of traffic between the buses and the parents. Moving down into the classroom wings, these essentially stay as is, although we've repurposed some of this existing space on the 2nd floor. Right now, when you come into the school, there's a maintenance facility on the 1st floor, and it's kind of this core support space. Upstairs, this classroom here, this is a small group instruction classroom, is currently being used as small group instruction, but it's also where many of the janitor supplies and cleaning supplies are being stored. So it's a bit, for lack of better terms, intoxicating when you go in there. We also have a new world language classroom. And we've been able to do this by down at the end of the school, a new addition where we have a music classroom on the 1st floor, which is we've moved music over to a new classroom that meets the state standard in size. And then on the 2nd floor, a new science classroom so that down here on the 5th and 6th grade, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade can use that science classroom as a dedicated science classroom that this wing would use. The school is broken out in 1st through 4th grade on the ground floor, and then 5th through 8th upstairs. So we've positioned that science classroom upstairs. So really the main focus of the project is this new addition off the back, new kindergarten classrooms, and then a new addition off the front of the school, which is both the music and the science labs.
Hi, Chris. This is Jim Stevens. I'm not sure if
Yep.
this question would be for you or for Preston or both of you. Michael at the last meeting had alluded to some value engineering that was going on to potentially reduce those two front areas and keep all of the additions to one area off the back of the school
Mhm.
for some cost reductions. I was just curious. This clearly doesn't reflect that, if that was an option that's been nixed since then, or what's happening with that.
Yeah, so this is, I'll just jump over this plan. Sorry, it's not colored. But one of the options, so we have proposed an addition here, which would be the science and the music classroom on a two-story addition. One thing we looked at is can we eliminate this addition altogether? That saves having to reconfigure the stairs here and build on a space off the end of the school. And what we've done is move the music classroom over as a single story portion of the addition off the gym. And then your world language moves down to the enrichment program. So that would be a shared classroom with the thought there that the utilization rate currently would provide access to that. It does limit your ability for preschool growth in the future, where thinking that this would expand into that area, but this would be another alternative. And Preston, if you want to, I think it was about a $250,000 savings to do this option.
$287,700 savings on the construction cost piece.
Okay, great. Thank you. And one other question or just a comment. So the school I attended, there were 2 exterior courtyards, and that's the first thing that doesn't get maintained, looks horrible, has problems and so forth. Is there a reason, or can you explain the reason for keeping that back exterior courtyard as opposed to using that for additional space or potentially for space?
Yeah, so this layout, we're focusing on preserving your school, the amenities that your school has to offer currently. You've done a good job maintaining the existing infrastructure in the school. And that was one thing that really rang true with the State Board of Education in their review. They like to invest in schools that need financial support for a certain reason. In your case, it's your population growth and you need more space. They don't want to be investing in schools that need maintenance done to them because they haven't been taking care of their schools. So with that, you have this nice library here and this existing infrastructure space. So we didn't want to say move this up against the library, which would create an internal space. Is we wanted to preserve that daylight and the existing school, and also keep the circulation to the school. As you see here, we've got an easy way that after hours you can lock down, say, this side of the building. Students can come in, students and parents can come in this way, as well as come in off the back, use this whole side of the school, and the remainder of the school stays secured. So to be able to preserve that existing space, as well as provide the circulation spine needed, that's kind of how it lended itself.
Okay, sorry. Let me clarify. To utilize that space additionally with this layout and make 2, 3, 4 additional rooms in there.
We could have it pushes the library to internal space. You would no longer have daylight in your library.
Okay.
Wouldn't that also increase the energy efficiency though? I feel like keeping this interior courtyard or whatnot like this, you're adding thousands of square feet of external walls that heat can be lost through, versus if you were to locate room in there, that would all be within the existing building envelope there.
It would, but we do have to provide daylighting in these classrooms.
Is that a legal requirement that there be daylighting in a library?
I'm not aware in a library, but I know in classrooms you are required to have daylighting.
Wow. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Can that be provided through like a solar tube from the ceiling?
Don't we have to worry about the separation of the school, the part of the school that's sprinkled and the part of the school that is unsprinkled?
Yeah, so that's another good point is because your existing school is not sprinkled, these additions are being built as essentially separate buildings. once they're constructed, you won't know that they're separate. But as you come down this hallway and enter into the new additions, they're going to be structurally separate from that building. They're not going to bear upon your existing. They're also going to have a fire separation here as well as down here. So, because we would be adding, say, another $1 million to $1.5 million to sprinkle the building if needed.
But that wouldn't have any bearing on whether or not you use the courtyard, right?
You would still have a firewall separating the two buildings.
Yeah.
I think that's your point. Yeah.
So is there an idea of how much extra cost there'll be for insurance on the building with the addition, as well as extra heating and cooling costs and ongoing maintenance costs?
So the mechanical systems, as we've designed, the plan is to have this solar ready so that when you add solar panels to the building, it would be essentially a net zero addition. So the mechanical systems would utilize that power, and you would have a zero addition in terms of operating costs.
Do you have a mechanical plan in that area, or are they available somewhere? I don't want to bog down the meeting with that, but just curious. So just curious on how the space then, is it all heat pumps for everything here? Is it?
Yeah, it has it. We've kept the existing school mechanical system as is. We're replacing a lot of the pumps and other systems just to upgrade it. But we're not redoing the mechanicals for the whole school. This would be treated as essentially a standalone project. So we're not getting into your existing mechanical systems.
So, sorry, can you clarify? So pumps and controls and other things are being addressed that might be in the current improvement
only in the
plans?
areas where there's renovation work going on. So the new addition that's shown in orange there would be all new mechanical systems, heat pump based, air source heat pumps. And in the areas that are like, say, red, there will be some reconfiguration of ductwork and distribution in order to, transform a kindergarten classroom into 4 small offices, that sort of thing. But the meat of your HVAC systems and your heating systems are not being changed in this project. And from what we hear from Scott Brown, they're working fine.
Okay, great. And sorry, can you just clarify, Scott Brown, the facilities?
The facilities director, yeah.
Director, okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
So just to touch back, you kind of just implied that there were no costs to heating and cooling this thing. You kind of waved your hand and said solar, it'll be free. But so are the solar panels included in the cost that's going to be funded by this bond?
No.
Okay, so there would be a cost to purchasing these solar panels.
Correct.
Okay, so I'm trying to ask, what is the, increase in maintenance, heating and cooling costs and insurance costs for this addition?
Insurance costs, I'm not aware of. We did have to do an assessment on what this would cost the school as part of the state building aid application. That was completed back in June, July, so I'd have to look back to that. Off the top of my head, I don't remember what that dollar amount would be. But we have that information.
And then all of these extra classrooms, is that going to require hiring a 4th custodian?
I don't think that there's an expectation that we would do that.
So the existing 3 custodians are going to have to work more?
Chris, I don't think we ever had any intention of hiring additional custodial staff. Is that accurate?
That's accurate. We have not talked about adding staff to do this. We think that we can manage our building facility with the existing staff we have.
Are the current staff working full-time or
Yes.
part-time?
Full
Well,
time.
if they're already working full-time and you're going to increase this, the number of rooms, the active classrooms in the school and the number of students in the school, I don't see how you're going to get the same amount of cleaning done out of the same amount of people. You're
Well, I
going
can
to end up
appreciate
costing
that.
another one.
I appreciate that. However, the administrative team, including our facilities director, who is in charge of all that and scheduling and knows the building inside and out, believe at this point in time we're good with who we have. So I'm going to take his word for it, and I believe it'll work.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well, it sounds a little unrealistic, and
Yeah,
I
I
think
think,
that's one of the
I-
costs that should be presented to the voters.
yeah, well, there'll clearly be an increase in that item. I mean, there's more effort to be expended here to work to do this. So is the removal of the first and second stories, does that hinge at all on the application? I assume this is the plan that was presented in the application with those?
This was it. We would still be having the same amount of programs. So say this classroom space here, we'd still be building it over on this side of the school. So it would slightly adjust our ratios. But as the project gets approved from the state, they do come back and re-review budgets and finances. So we would have to just update them at that time.
So is that the decision to abandon sort of this design and move on to the more constructible one or the lesser cost constructability one?
The committee last week did take off a tower, if you will, that was on the back of the student wing. So that brought some costs down, and some of the work and so forth that was going to be done in the classroom area was also changed. So there were changes made. This is called Concept 5, and this is the concept that was attached to the building aid application. But as Chris Solomon said, they will come back, and if we've made, some efficiencies or some changes, that's acceptable. But also, just to reiterate, we did take a second story piece off of the back. So this is an adjusted schematic here.
Susan, what are these towers that keep getting referred to? Is this like a decorative element?
No, maybe it's bad, bad way to verbalize it. But if you look at that peach section on the far left, that is a 2-story addition at the end of the student wing. And the first floor of that would be the music room, and the second floor would be the science lab. And then on the back, we had a similar addition that had 2 rooms. I think one was 400 square feet, the other was 216, something like that, times 2 floors. And those were for the small group learning work. And because of the way that the road comes around the back, and because of having to move the stairwell and everything, it was determined that per square foot, that was pretty costly. So that was removed. And so that piece has been taken off, and it has already reduced costs.
Okay, so tower just means second 2-story addition.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's right. Yeah.
So there would still be, just to clarify, there wouldn't be the one on the back, but there would be the one on the front, correct?
At this time, right.
At this time, but then you also have sort of a sub proposal where you said you'd eliminate that tower at the front, move those to the back, and that's what was going to save like another 287,000.
Right.
That tower on the front looks like about the same size as that interior courtyard. I mean, do you know what the cost difference would be to just put that space inside that courtyard instead of building it on in the front there?
So both of those classrooms would have no windows if they went in the courtyard. I think that's the biggest challenge with that.
I mean, so the requirement is to have daylight. Do skylights and those solar tubes that bring skylight in from the roof, do those count?
Don't know if it's written as daylighting or vision glazing. We'd have to look at that.
Have to check so there's actually an ed specification that the state publishes that specifies, classrooms have to be 900 square feet, kindergarten classrooms have to be 1,000 square feet. And they have all these different formulas and calculations. I believe that in order to be considered for state building aid, you have to comply with all of their ed specifications. That's where we could look to confirm the daylighting question.
So the daylighting is only required if you want the state building aid. Is that the case? I mean, is that something where we could build it without that requirement, but we just wouldn't be able to apply for the state building aid?
And sorry, I was only suggesting we should at least look at that from do an analysis on what the gain is there. You know, we're already working in that back area. It's kind of dead square footage. And again, you know, now what we're dragging lawnmowers through the school in order to cut the grass in there or maintain the landscaping, and you know, it just becomes sort of a maintenance headache having that interior space, especially without any external access to it.
Yeah, I agree. Every school building I've been in that has one of these interior courtyards, it hardly ever gets used, and it's just kind of wasted space. With some maintenance cost, I think it would be much more energy efficient to have that filled with some sort of interior space and not have this protrusion off the front of the building, just from an energy perspective.
To
So
me,
I think
But
that's
it
they
something
are,
looks
worth
like-
they already
considering.
saying that there's an option to take that space off the front, take those towers off the front and put them on the back without having to touch the courtyard. So I don't really think it's going to save us anything.
Well, if you put it in the courtyard, it's inside the building envelope, and therefore, I mean, all you're really paying for is a new roof in that area. You're not building as many walls and stuff like that.
to me, it looks like you can actually make that courtyard maybe about a third of the size smaller, still maintain your daylight requirements, and pick up additional space on that world language classroom real simply, and you know, have basically save a lot of space that is, we know is tough because we have the wetlands out back. So we need to conserve as much space as we can by making that courtyard smaller, that would afford some additional space, even if we don't use it now.
Yeah, that's a good point. And also, I mean, if the requirement is that classrooms have daylight, I mean, the library is not technically a classroom, and maybe some of these other rooms, the meeting rooms and the one-on-one instructions and those things, nurse's office, those could be put in there if that's a real big issue. But I mean, if the only issue is that you can't get state building aid for that, then I don't think that's a real hurdle, because we don't even know if we're going to be able to get state building aid by the time this bond comes up to vote. So I don't think that voters can really count on there being state building aid.
Well,
We just have to consider the full actual cost of this project.
state building aid is a huge piece of the success of this, I would assume. And I also understand that the state building aid does not apply to preschool space. Is that correct?
Correct.
That's correct.
So what's the plan? Wouldn't we propose a plan that put the preschool in existing space and made that new space something else that would qualify for state aid?
I think it also, we want to look at, you know, what is the educational environment that you're looking to achieve. And I would caution you that a preschool would most likely want to have daylighting and natural light coming in.
Well, a preschool in
But
town.
that's not what I said.
Right.
So John, I think what you're saying, you're saying we're building 3 new kindergarten classrooms. That empties out some other rooms within the building. So maybe flip where we're putting the technology lab, make that the preschool, and then put the technology lab out where it would, and that way the preschool would just be in existing space, and we wouldn't have quite the impact. That's
Right. I think we want to maximize that state aid as much as possible because it's a significant chunk of money.
Yeah, I'm just taking notes for us to follow up on when the board meets again.
I think some thought went into, and of course, I'm the contractor, not the architect, but I think there was some logic between or behind grouping the kindergarten and the preschool age groups together. And creating that entrance and some separation from the older, bigger kids as well. So that
Yeah, I can appreciate that. And, I have a preschooler currently in Northwood. I guess, to John's point, though, I'm not sure it's worth losing out on recouping 30% or potentially recouping up to 30% of the cost for that square footage.
think it came out to about $42,000 in the application.
That's a pretty good chunk of money.
Another question, is the current well able to support the sprinklers that are necessary for the addition?
There's no sprinklers in this building, addition or existing.
Oh, it's not required in the addition?
Correct.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Because it's a separate building of small enough square footage?
That's right. Yeah.
Okay, great.
Yeah, because it's separated with a firewall. So the code treats it as two separate buildings altogether.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
One thing for the group to note as well is that until or that solar is proposed, you know, the electric costs here, if this is all electric heat, then it sounded like currently are gonna, you know, increase. I don't know if either you ran it. What is it? Maybe 20% or so, or greater for this addition.
That'd be a question for the electrical engineer. I don't know.
Yeah, and we did do a full energy study for the state building aid application, so I don't know what the exact numbers are. But
Is that something we can see or is posted on the website, or it seems like a lot of that information's in the application?
Yeah, we can get that out to everybody.
Can you guys just post the state building aid application on the website? That would seem to be the simplest solution.
Yeah, I don't see why not. It's probably also important just to remind folks that this is, I don't know, maybe 15%, 20% of the total design effort. So, and this is a common process that every town goes through. They do enough design so they can get some accurate costs to go for approval. So if this is approved in March, keep in mind that Chris and his consultants and engineers still have a lot of work to do to fine tune the design, to identify all of the mechanical equipment and all of the components that, you know, end up getting specified in the final construction documents. So I think a lot of the feedback that you're providing and a lot of the questions you're asking too may require additional design that hasn't been done yet to really nail down some of the utility costs. The type of things that you're asking about, like moving portions of the building and, you know, different size footprints and infilling courtyards, things like that. Those are the types of things that from a construction cost standpoint, we need to certainly understand if that's the direction that the town wants to go. But working through some of those finer details, you know, it's very common for that to happen also after the vote.
So, Chris, what percentage is this design currently? Is this beyond conceptual?
Yeah, we're into the design development phase, but there's still, you know, a long ways to go in terms of actually designing the full systems. We have enough of a design to price it and to get an actual cost, but now we need to get into the actual details and how this is going to be constructed.
And so with that, and forgive me, this is just process we go through on some capital projects, is you come up with the various concepts that look at the various costing for each one, sort of determine a concept and proceed with that. So there was an estimate presented back in, I'm sorry, I forget when that meeting was, Susan, but maybe 8 months ago or so, that I believe Chris had prepared. Has that estimate, as the scope has been more defined, has that been refined, or where does that estimate stand now, and what level of estimate is it at?
So we're going to, and Preston, you can jump in. We're going to move into that. It's kind of the next part of the presentation. Is we took those drawings, which was really just at a schematic phase, and developed those so that he had a set of drawings for estimating building plans, sections, elevations, details from structural engineer, mechanical engineer, a civil engineer, and went out to his subs and developed a full cost estimate in today's in today's dollars. So we can segue into that next section if we wanted to.
Sure, and I guess then Preston, what level estimate's going to be presented here?
Essentially the level of detail of the estimate corresponds with the level of detail of design. So this is a schematic design would be sort of how I would characterize it. So what we're working with is a schematic estimate. Chris is right. The process that we went through was we took the documents that he has completed, reviewed them with the facilities committee. Some adjustments were made based on feedback. We also kind of got into some of the details and some of the more technical aspects with Chris, and again took that feedback into account. We have 3 full-time cost estimators on staff, and so they worked on preparing the estimate. And we looked at, as we talked about, that alternate to do the music room on the first floor as part of that. So maybe it would be better if we start with the overall project cost, and then we can dive into the hard costs and soft costs separate, just so I don't even know if people have actually even seen where the total project cost is at this point.
Are there any other questions on the design before we move into that from the committee?
I mean, so one question is, I saw there was something about, a Title I office in a closet and some other kind of administrative positions and stuff. With the move to getting out of the SAU and bringing some of the SAU positions back to Nottingham, there was talk about potentially putting them in another building somewhere or renting out one of the office buildings over at Fernald Lumber or something like that. So having our own payroll type people. Are some of these space issues like this Title I administration thing, are those things that could be moved potentially into that building with the SAU type stuff?
Chris Sousa, do you want to speak to that?
Sure. I think that some of the SAU needs will certainly don't need to be in our building, and that's what they're looking for, the office space. But when you look at some of the grant management, there may be some options for some of that work to be done. But we're looking at Title I as actually a teaching space, so that's not just an administrative space. They're working with our youngest K-2 population. Currently, right now, we focus on mathematics, but Title I can certainly also be reading interventions as well. So we want to make sure we maintain that space here on site, because we can't be transporting kids back and forth to the main building. But the grant administration, that work that could be done and largely is done by our coordinator at home or working with the SAU.
And conversely, when finding space for the people that we would need to take over the SAU duties, instead of renting, say, a building at Fernald Lumber or something, is that something that you could build office space into this addition for? Potentially that's something that you could place in that interior courtyard that does not require daylighting.
That's a thought. That's a good thought. Because I do think that we know we're going to have a lot of cost savings, and we think having SAU services more localized and a little bit fewer layers, if you will, just being directly involved at the school is going to be way more cost effective and also more efficient.
Yeah, and I think someone had mentioned they wanted it to be as close to the school as possible, which was why the Fernald Lumber building was discussed. So having it inside, literally inside the school, would be good in that case.
Yeah, I like that thought.
I would agree. Not at the expense of student space, but certainly in addition to, as you mentioned, whether it be the courtyard or, you mentioned a plan B. I really don't know what the plan B, because that really wasn't something that we had talked about moving forward on. But certainly there is room around the outside of the building that could be utilized perhaps for building more office space.
Well, from a cost of building it and heating it and cooling it in the future, ongoing cost perspective, using the courtyard space and not having that large open external area in the center of the building would definitely be the most efficient way to do it.
Are there any other questions on the design before we move into the cost?
Yeah, so what is the plan at this point and schedule for completing the design and making decisions on, you know, things to be removed or not removed and so forth?
The plan would be, as we take feedback tonight, we would then continue through March. Say if we're planning on a successful March bond vote, we would then go into a construction documents phase and finalize the drawings. Over the summer, we would start with the site work, and then over the next year, they would do the addition to the school and renovations. And Preston, you could probably fill in a little bit more detail.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if the question was more in preparation for the warrant article or how it would progress after that.
I guess both, really.
Okay, yeah, so I think the town is probably running out of time to make a lot of changes before finalizing the warrant article. You guys probably know better than I do what the timing is to have that number, I guess, and design finalized, but I'm guessing it's probably within the next week or two. So I think if there's any major changes that want to be made to this plan, we need to understand that right away, so we can update estimates and plans and so forth and finalize that. But really, once that warrant article is established, we are really on hold. I mean, we're available, obviously, to present at public meetings and help provide information. But until the project is approved, Chris and his team aren't going to be advancing the design. But what does happen after it is approved is he'll get to the design development stage. Ekman will do an updated estimate as well and confirm that the costs are still in line with the approved amount of money. If there are areas where the scope is crept and there are additional design that has caused costs to go up, or for whatever other reason, we'll come up with value engineering ideas, review cost savings options with the committee. And you know, there's often some horse trading that goes on too. We've already started some of that where the facilities committee said, you know what, you know, we'd like to back off on some windows and some brick facade and let's make some reductions in cost because you know, we know that that's really sensitive for the citizens. So there'll continue to be that type of work and really until the construction documents are finalized. Hopefully those will be finalized, you know, by May, June timeframe. I don't know if that's realistic, Chris. Oftentimes what we see is an early release package. So for instance, the site work might be 100% designed and the structural might be 100% designed, and we'd be in a position to put those portions of the project out to bid while some of the more minor details of the building are being finalized. So that would put us in a position to actually award those portions of the project and get that early work going sooner. The goal is certainly to take advantage of the first summer as much as possible because there aren't any students there. So doing earthwork and getting foundations in would be a great goal. And it really just depends on, you know, whether the design is at a point where we can put it out to bid. The funding is another big piece of this too. I think the bond sales you know, typically happen in June. And I believe as of July 1st is when the funding becomes available. So understanding how to pay for some of the design fees and other expenses, there'll be some geotechnical testing and other things like that that the school will need to pay for in advance of construction. So that's another element that'll need to be, you know, managed, but typically towns find a way to do that. But once the balance of the design is complete, this entire project will be put out to bid. Ekman doesn't really self-perform any components of the project. We're not the site work contractor or the foundation guy or the masonry. We're the project managers, the site superintendents. We take care of all the quality control and safety, and act as a general contractor. So it's a process that the committee will be involved with as well. We'll put together a list of invited bidders for all the different trades, review the tabulated bid results, and make selections together. The contract itself is called the guaranteed maximum price. So we are guaranteeing the overall construction costs, and if there's savings that are realized during the course of the project, they get returned back to the town.
And when does that guaranteed price that's already been determined in your successful bid, I guess, to this point?
Well, to be honest, the warrant article is the guaranteed maximum price. It is the de facto value. We've done over 50 school projects in New Hampshire, never gone back to ask voters for more money. It's just not an option, right? So the contract itself usually gets finalized once the construction documents are done and all the numbers come in. But for all intents and purposes, we know the number can't be more than what's approved. So,
and really, Preston and our team will work to assure that. I mean, once that number is set, it's our task to make sure that the project comes in on that budget.
So let's talk. Let me flip. I think I can share screens too. Let me give this a try. Okay, so you guys should be seeing the overall project budget, hard costs at the top. Is that working?
It's there for a minute, but now it's just narrow.
No? Okay. Let me try again. Share.
Might be stuck between the two screens.
All right, let me stop. Screen one. Try that one.
There it is.
There we go.
Yeah, it didn't have that green box around it. So, okay, great. So there are two components, as I'm sure everyone is aware, of these capital projects. There's the hard costs and the soft costs. So the hard costs are Ekman's responsibility, and the soft costs are the town's responsibility. So the hard costs are really your construction costs. If you were to pick the building up and shake it, anything that doesn't fall out is typically a hard cost. It's an oversimplified way of thinking about it, and we can kind of get into more of the details. But we have the overall construction costs that's been estimated at $4,988,000 and change. We've included an estimating contingency, which is 5% of that value. And that's really a reflection of the fact that the design is not completed yet. We've used a combination of historic construction costs for different components of the building. We've talked about our conversations with Chris and tried to really build the building in our mind and anticipate all of the things that haven't actually been designed yet as we account for those costs. But we're not perfect, and that's why at this stage of the game, it's always prudent to have a 5% contingency. As the design goes through its progression and we get closer to construction documents, that percentage is reduced because there's less uncertainty. We've also included an escalation contingency. I believe this is about 2.5%. And this is really just an acknowledgement that construction costs continue to climb. And we've seen this year over year, especially in recent history, in the 5 to 7% range. This project would be bid in, roughly 6 months. So, 2.5%, I think, is probably the right number. The effect of COVID is obviously a huge question mark, but it has certainly constrained supply in different parts of construction, and in some cases it has caused some cost escalation. Others are thinking, oh, maybe construction will slow down and costs will go down, but at this point we're really not seeing that, so we think it's prudent to include that contingency as well. If it's not needed, it goes back to the town, and that's, you know, that's obviously our hope. So the second half of the overall project costs are the soft costs. And these are, you know, basically all of the other non-construction related costs, design fees, architectural and engineering fees, the civil engineering fees, testing and inspections. So throughout construction, there will be independent testers that you'll hire to take samples of concrete and samples of mortar and take them back to labs and test them to make sure that they are meeting design strength. Geotechnical boring, so we'll need to identify, well, the structural engineer really needs to identify the soil bearing capacity in order to finalize its foundation design. The borings or test bits will allow him to make that determination. Legal, security, a lot of other items that you know, all are anticipated costs, but outside of construction. Data and technology, I think that's pretty straightforward. You're adding new classrooms. There'll be new wireless access points, probably smart boards and that sort of thing too. So that's that component. Marker boards, furniture. We have a preschool, so there's some money set aside for the preschool playground. As part of this project, we will need to relocate the transformer in the back of your building. So the utility company will be charging the school for a new transformer, for pulling new lines to that location. And $40,000 has been estimated for that. There's some additional costs for bonds and things like that. That are going to be, you know, there's a cost to actually issue bonds. So I think that was a number that Susan had come up with. On some projects, school districts have owners reps. It's like an independent third party that is sort of your eyes and ears on the project. I don't know if that's a requirement if you receive state building aid. It may be. So there's some money in there.
That line item is just a placeholder so that if building aid is approved, we would be required to have one.
Okay, yeah. And then you have an owner's contingency as well. This is different than the construction or the estimating contingency. This is for really unforeseen conditions that are encountered that, you know, could not have been ascertained from the design. You know, if we just go to dig and there's an oil tank that no one knew about, and now there's a cost to remediate, you know, contaminated soils and that sort of thing. If you hit ledge, if we start to, you know, modify components of your HVAC system and discover, oh my gosh, you've got major issues. We actually had a project at the Newmarket Elementary School where we're adding on to an existing sanitary system below the slab, and discovered that it was cracked and damaged and had been leaking into the ground for many years. So those kind of surprises can come up during addition renovation projects. So it's always good for you to have a contingency for that as well.
What is that 5% of the
That's
total?
5% of the construction costs, right, Chris?
Yeah, so overall, there's about 10% contingency built into this budget, plus 2.5 on top of that for the escalation contingency. So 12.5% of contingency.
So Preston, you have the bond costs in here for 40,000. What about the interest costs on this bond? Are those reported anywhere? Do we know what kind of interest rate we're going to get and what the total cost to the taxpayer is going to be?
I checked on that today and have a spreadsheet from the bond bank. It's an estimate at this time.
Is that the one you emailed me, Susan? Would you like me to put that up?
Sure. So basically on a $6.2 million project, a 20-year bond is 1.7 million, 1711289.91.
1.7 million. So this would be $8 million cost total then?
7.959. And then on a 15-year, it would be a 2% rate, and the total would be 1,090,000, so 1,090,770. And the total project would be 7,338,501. So they do mark these as estimates, but they're fresh today based on these new numbers. And again, these numbers are just being updated last week.
And it's an assumed 2% interest rate, it looks like.
It was a 2.5 on the 20-year estimated schedule, and 2 on the
15.
On the 15, yeah.
Boy, I remember the first presentation the school board did when they said it was going to be a $2 million addition.
But I mean, that's why we're going through the process, right? To understand what this is the best look we've had at actual real cost to date. So I'm with you right there. But I mean, this is real information right at this point now that people have actually done the design, done some estimates, Tom. I mean, it's where we're at. So it's good we're getting the right and correct and good information, good, bad,
Yep.
or ugly, right?
So when the bond warrant article goes up, does it say 6.2 million or does it say 7.9 million?
It has a section, the way we understand it, we're looking at it now, we'll need bond council guidance, but it will say, my understanding is it will have the total budgeted value, so it would be that 6247, plus it would show what the first year cost would be, and it would show the total bond cost. That's my understanding, without having legal completely finalize the language. So to answer you, there would be disclosure on all of the aspects.
Does it also carry the usual tax impact statement, just kind of figured to the future? Does it say something like, this will raise the school tax point, 82 cents per thousand for the next 15 years?
I don't think that the warrant article, typically we do have tax impact noted there. So there should be some tax impact put out there. I believe it would show the tax impact on the 6.2 and very likely the tax impact on the first year, but we really should talk about all of that and make sure that we're having full disclosure.
Yeah, I think it would be good if it showed the tax impacts for, I guess you could only really do it for the next few years just because the tax base is always changing, but it would be good to have the tax impact for the next year and then a statement that says, and it will be that for, 15 more years or 20 years or whatever the term of the bond is.
Yeah, what's good about this, I guess, in terms of numbers, is that we've just had our 5-year reval. So we're at that 796 right now. And I do think that will obviously change year over year, but it will, for 5 years, I don't think we're going to have a lot of movement.
And then, so you said that, so this is the number that would be on the warrant article. We wouldn't find out if we got that state aid until after the town meeting, after the vote.
Right, you could not promise state aid. So we're eligible for 30%. I believe there are 7 or 8 other towns that are also applying. Some of them also were eligible for 30%, but there were 3 or 4 eligible for 60%. So.
And how many of those, if there's, you said 3 or 4 that are eligible for 30%, how many, are they just giving it out to one? What does that look like?
I don't know the answer. I don't know how they would determine who would get state aid, but just looking at the list, and we can provide the list to you.
I'm just trying to figure out how many they give out. Sorry, Susan.
Oh, they give out 3, I believe.
Thank you. And then is that 30% of the 6.1?
It would be 30% of the eligible costs in the would it be in the 4.8, Chris? And
It was based on the 4.8, and they have, say, the last time this happened 2 years ago, I think they had roughly 15 million to give out. It ended up being 5 schools were selected, 2 didn't pass their bond votes, 3 got school funding. It could be 1 school takes the whole 15 or 20 million, or it could be 20 schools all get $1 million apiece. It depends on the size of the project.
yeah, and
Thank
some
you.
of those projects were big that we're in the pool with.
Yeah.
Thank you for that, though, Chris. Thanks for that clarification.
And my understanding is it's typically 50 million every biennium that the legislature appropriates to the school building aid fund. And within that 50 million, they have to pay the debt, the tail payments on the existing bonds. And whatever's left over is what gets divvied up among the new projects. Part of the uncertainty is still, well, the legislature still has to vote to, appropriate the 50 million. And I don't believe that they are under any legal obligation to do that. To my knowledge, they never have failed to. But it's unfortunate that they haven't identified which projects would actually be funded at this point. And I think it was COVID or something like that Amy Clark at the state had indicated was slowing them down.
You said there was an emergency order that impacted the timing. I'm not sure which one, though.
So Chris and Preston, I guess currently, how's change management handled between I guess Preston, really, how's change management handled at this point between the town and yourself and that guaranteed maximum price?
Yeah, so if there are changes to the design that the town wants to make, we'll update that construction cost. And we've already kind of given some options. And, one of them was the alternate, the music room alternate that we talked about. So we would approach it the same way and say, okay, if, and again, we are kind of running out of time here to make a lot of design changes and price a lot of different options. But if there were, changes at this point, we just need to update the estimate or, tell you what the difference would be, and you can decide whether it's a change that you want to accept or not. Once the actual contract is signed, so like after the project is approved, we go through all of the design and it's been bid and we have, a final guaranteed maximum price contract. It's actually kind of a similar process. It's just the design change. If there's a design change that's requested, Chris will issue a sketch. We'll price it with the impacted subcontractors, come back with a cost estimate. And then the school district can decide whether they want to do the change or not. And if so, the contract value is adjusted accordingly.
All right, thanks. Can you put the estimate back up for a second, please?
Is the estimate, is that going to be added to that website soon?
Yes, I think, did I share the right screen here?
Yes.
Yeah.
Want to go through your construction estimate as well, or
Yeah, we can go through that if you'd like.
I have one question on these soft costs before we
Sure.
get into that. Mr. Sousa, do you feel that the 90,000 in furnishings is going to appropriately outfit any changes to the school, furniture and whatever's required?
Yeah, yes, I do. I don't think we're going to have a large technology need, which tends to suck up a lot of costs. And the furniture, we already have some furniture available to us. It'll be the preschool that'll require more of a new age-appropriate furniture and furnishings. But I believe that we'll be able to utilize that money efficiently.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
So I think at this point for us, it would be great to get feedback on the $287,000 change to go to the one-story music room. If that's something that is still under consideration, or sort of what your process is to try to finalize that component. And then there were, a few other things as well that were discussed. I'm kind of wondering what the process is for the town on making decisions on those items.
Well, the school board, tomorrow we're going to be meeting again with this Space Advisory Committee. We planned that so that we could have take your feedback and work on that. The school board is scheduled to meet next Wednesday, and I think they need to weigh in on a final iteration on this as well. So we may need to have a meeting of the school board before that, because we need to have, a lot of postings completed and so forth. So.
Susan, I know I've raised it, but I'll say it again. I think the time, if this gets approved and to go to construction, the time to address any sort of space needs would be now. It'll be cheaper now than it ever will be in the future. And leaving that courtyard in there, although I guess it's a nice thing to have, it doesn't replace square footage and finished space when, presumably we'll need it, or the school could, I'm sure nobody would complain about having more finished space that could be utilized.
Yeah, what would that courtyard be for?
You want to jump back to the plans or share the screen?
I mean, it sounds like it's literally just to satisfy a lighting requirement for the library.
So what would it look like? Would it just be like grass?
I'll jump in there. I think it's largely aesthetics as far as what it would look like and to start with, but there is a functionality as far as daylight into the library and room there. It would also be an outdoor-based classroom, and eventually what we were thinking of is we would do fundraising. Perhaps the PTA would help sponsor it and turn the softscape into hardscape, so that while we're going to start out with grass, that decision was made because it's cost-effective to start with. And then eventually turn that into more of usable space with better landscaping and something that's easier to maintain, but also more usable for kids.
I think it's a little unrealistic to say it's going to be useful as an outdoor classroom when in New Hampshire, most of the months that the school's in session, it's not so nice to be sitting outside. I think if we can figure out how to get around this daylight requirement, and also I just had a thought here that, only this enrichment programs room is a new room that adjoins the courtyard. The library and the reading room and whatnot here, curriculum director, those are the ones that would be impacted by this being closed in, and they would lose their daylight, but those are not part of the new construction costs. So if the daylight requirement is something that needs to be met to get state building aid, then it doesn't matter if we're blocking off the lights into the library. Those windows you could have lights installed in those windows to kind of simulate the same amount of light coming into that room. But I don't think this daylight thing is really a really good reason to have this massive hole in the middle of the building, which again is just from an energy standpoint, not very smart. Also, there could be issues. I don't know which way the roof drains right now, but I mean, you have roofs all around this thing where, what are you're going to have plans for how to store water out of this thing.
Yeah. And so this is the site plan of that area, Thomas. So there are drains shown, 3 drains, in fact, which also tie into roof drains that daylight at the end of the slope there.
So
I will answer your question.
Can I just say something about the courtyards quickly? Put my 2 cents in.
Yes.
Exeter High School has courtyards put in their building, and that high school was built about 10 or 12 years ago. My wife's been a teacher there for the whole time. The courtyards have never been used for any resource for outside or anything until this year, where they needed the outside space because of COVID. So
yeah, that's been my experience as well.
It's been a beautiful design, and it looks nice when you're walking down the hall to look out at this vacant space. But for purposes, unless you already got a real solid plan about using it with work area, class area, and you're really going to stick to using it, which I hope you would if it stays in the plan, it is, I have to agree, a wasted space. Just an opinion from me.
Are the glazing schedules done as well? I mean, we're talking 3 manholes here, all the drainage, all that trenching across the way. You know, would think some of that would offset the roof cost as well as the, you know, any additional partitioning or anything in there, or even if that's done down the road, the roof's in and done.
Yeah, I think it would be great to have a kind of a rough cost estimate for what it, what it would cost to do this versus what would it cost to put an extra roof over here and just turn this courtyard area into, just office space that could be used for the SAU functions.
Okay. While we're looking at this plan, it's probably worth mentioning a few other site-related items. You do currently have a sewer line that exits the building right here in light gray. You can also see those are the tank, the sanitary tank and pumps. This is actually the pump chamber right here, which ejects the sewer up to these leach fields, which are up by the fields, the athletic fields. So this, these are actually, well, from what we understand, original pumps and tanks. Those are being relocated to this location here as part of this work. The sanitary line is being extended underneath the new addition and then routed to the new tanks and the new pump chambers, which are then feeding the leach fields. We've been told by the civil engineer that the leach fields don't need to be modified despite the additional space, because there aren't necessarily additional students. You're not adding enough, I guess, to make a difference. So that's good news. We talked about the drainage here. We also have the transformer, which I mentioned earlier. So this is in light gray where your current transformer is. Unfortunately, it falls right on the building there. So that would be moved over. This transformer is fed underground from a pole in this location. So there'd be a new line and conduit trenched. This would be primary power brought to the transformer, and the transformer would be connected to the building from that new location. So that's all accounted for in the cost as well. The site itself, there's actually a decent amount of work going on back here. Despite,
Can we revise this to show that, like a new quasite or something going in and not rerunning that underground? Is it overhead electrical right now? Sorry.
No, it's underground.
Can we jump in on that instead of running all that, however many feet is new?
Could we go overhead from the pole to the building?
No, just take it back under that new gravel walkway and grab it there. Don't pull all new wire and everything.
I don't know that answer. That actually will all get worked out by, is Eversource the utility company in Nottingham? Or is it?
New Hampshire Co-op.
New Hampshire Co-op, yeah. So what'll happen is when the project gets approved, a work order will be placed with New Hampshire Co-op. They'll actually engineer it. They handle, we do the trenching and put the conduit in for them, but they actually pull the wire, set the transformer. That's why you have the 40,000 in your soft cost for utility back charges. So if there's a way to reuse that wire and bring it over, certainly would want to look at it. The cost is not huge, to be honest. So the other question is, we don't yet know if the service is going to be increased because of, the additional square footage that's being added. So if that's the case, they may need to increase the size of the wire anyways.
So Chris, what level of information's on those plans, or are those plans available to be posted for the whatever electrical design's been done and the load on the proposed heating equipment?
We have not done a full electrical design for the building. And we do have a full mechanical narrative that we can make available for anybody.
Great. Yeah, if you could make the mechanical available, that would be great. Thanks.
So there's a decent amount of grading that goes on in this space as well. You may not have ever noticed it, but if you actually stand on this in this back loop road, the grade actually drops about 3 feet or so from the building, and then of course it drops off much quicker once you get to the edge of the wooded area. So in order to avoid the addition, this road gets pushed back towards the wooded area. So there's clearing. There's actually a retaining wall that goes in here to minimize any wetland disturbance. And there's a decent amount of fill that comes in here, I believe around 2,000 cubic yards. And then there's a guardrail as well that gets put in place to keep vehicles from heading up down the hill. So that's a quick recap on the site work. This road does not get paved, but it does get gravels underneath. So there's, I think, 12 inches and then another 8 inches of gravel. So if the school wanted to pay this in the future, you'd have the right sub base to do that. Any other questions on the site?
Is there any site-specific permitting required, SWIPs, et cetera, that are
Yes.
generated from the roof or runoff or anything?
Yep, there definitely will be a stormwater pollution prevention plan required. The civil engineer put that together, and when we have a site contractor on board, he'll work with them. Of course, there'll be erosion control and all of those measures in place during construction to limit any sedimentation getting into the wetlands. So yeah, that will all be required. This will not require an alteration of terrain permit. At least we don't believe so. That's really something the civil engineer will look into, but I think it's 100,000 square feet of disturbance. I don't think we're going to hit that threshold. That's another level of permitting at the state. But if it is required, it is required, and it's it's something that the civil engineer will handle for you.
And that's covered in those soft costs in your estimate, or is that in your costs or the architect's costs with the civil engineer?
The civil engineer is covered in the soft costs, yeah. So let's see if there's any. These are all just details that I don't think most people are interested in. This is the erosion control plan. There'll be construction entrances, stabilized entrances, silt fence, erosion control all the way along the perimeter of the wetland. This shows better the existing tanks and pumps that are being relocated and existing electrical. Okay, what other questions can we answer for you guys?
All right, if there's no other questions. So Sue, I understand you'll go back to the school board. It sounds like you have a couple meetings scheduled over the course of the next week, and then you're going to finalize those numbers and put them on the warrant article for the bond. And that hearing, again, is going to be on Wednesday, January 13th.
That's what we expect, yep.
So sorry, are these plans and the details and the estimate available somewhere?
It hasn't been posted yet, but yeah, we can make that available either through the website. I don't know. I think we were kind of holding off to understand if there were any changes that were going to be made. So yeah, my recommendation, maybe you want to wait to work that out just so there isn't confusion with the public.
Yeah, so we'll talk about it tomorrow. And then I think we need to have the board, kind of weigh in on that. We've got a lot of, I think, really interesting feedback around areas that I hadn't thought about. So I think it's been valuable.
So we'll be focusing a lot on possible changes to the use of the courtyard space tomorrow, correct?
That's what it sounds like, yeah.
Okay.
All right, great. Well, if there's no other questions, I may sign off.
Yeah, thank you very much, both of you, for coming in and presenting, and Sue, thanks for organizing it.
Yeah, thank you guys for being here. It really helped. I think it was, the information that you bring to it is really, really valuable. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, Preston, very
Okay.
much.
Yeah, our pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank
Have a
you.
great night.
Happy New Year.
Yep, same to you.
Thank you.
Thanks all.
I just have a quick question, Tim. I think you have expressed that you'd like to go through revenue and kind of follow through the binder. And I just would like to check with Carol. Carol, would you like me to stay and help with that, or?
Yeah, I don't know who the best expert on that is, but it's probably not me.
Well, I don't think, I'm willing to, I'm more than happy to stay and help if you guys are okay with that. And I'm no expert, but I can go through the materials. If that's okay.
Yeah.
Sue, I think it would be helpful.
All righty then.
Thank you.
I guess before we get into the binder, one thing, Monica, you had emailed me that there was a change and it wasn't reflected in the budget that we received yesterday from what I could see, or this morning, the Excel version, as far as the 3% increase for Dover transportation. That was included in that proposed budget still.
Okay, and I may not have, I'm trying to remember, I met this morning with Glenn and we went through, I think that was in the list of items that Nate had sent from the 17th. That's on me, that I forgot to mention that to him and ask him to make that adjustment. It's on the single transportation item. I do remember y'all talking about that.
But other than that, just to let the committee know, that was the only change, or potentially it's not a change in what I had sent out this morning.
Right.
But that's the only item, and I'll.
Right. All the other changes should be there. And we did confirm, there was a question that had come up previously, I think in the December 3rd discussion, there was a question that came up regarding increasing salaries that are not under collective bargaining into the default budget. And that change has been made as well. We confirmed that that does not occur in the default.
So just so everybody in the committee is clear, that the line number for the spreadsheet is 351. The function is 2721 and object 5519. Transportation for Dover High School is a 3% increase in the budget for 4193.86, and that should be flat to last year.
Does the default, sorry, Tim.
No, go ahead, John.
Does the default budget still include move-ins for high school? Because it shouldn't.
I think we took high school move-ins out of both.
Both budgets, yeah.
My understanding that there were, I think there were 3 or 5 in a line at a Co-Brown rate. And I believe we asked for both to be removed.
Okay, thank you.
So then if we want to move in, I guess if everybody has their binders, on the tax impact tab would be the first tab that we'd be covering.
Okay. All right. Kim, did you want one of us to just run through that?
Well, Yeah, I was hoping that one of you could kind of go through these tabs. I don't think we need to go through the staff list, but I think going through the revenue piece, because it's the first time that I think, 4 or 5 members of this committee have actually seen this information. So to kind of, I guess, walk through some of these pieces would be important.
Okay, I'm gonna just try to pull up a spreadsheet that I have on my computer. Got here. Okay, so my understanding of what we're looking here is that we've got an operating budget that we propose to you that's significant. It's 14,960,000. And it includes a fair amount of sunk costs that I think we were all actually surprised by. You deduct your revenues and credits, which is 149,000 from that, and you get your district assessment at 14.8 million. Our adequate education grant that we'll be expecting is 1,748,415. You can find that spreadsheet out on the DOE website with all the details as to how that number is arrived at. And then our education tax is the 1,366. So the local amount that would have to be raised that would have an impact on our tax rate is 11,695, 11,695,000. Our new assessed value that is used for the
Susan, before you get to that, can that education tax, that 1.36 million, is that the amount when we get our tax bills? It's broken down into town, county, state education, local education. Is that 1.3 million? Is that the state education tax?
Yeah, I think they refer to that as the swept amount. So they charge that, and it essentially never even leaves the town, I don't believe, but that is that piece that you're talking about.
Right. So it's important to remember that's also, $1.36 million that the local taxpayers are going to be paying on top of this 11.7.
Right. Absolutely. And then it just gets divided in. You take your 796 million, and when you do the division of your expenses into your 796 million, you end up with a tax rate of 1469. And last year our tax rate was 1291, so this represents a $1.78 increase. But for every 1,000 in home value, you're getting 1469. So, and then it just breaks out. If you had a home value of anywhere from 75 to 425, that would be the math of that tax rate against that house value.
I don't know how long ago these home value numbers were put in here, but those are pretty low on the list, and there's a number that are much higher than that. It kind of misrepresents the spread.
I think you're right, Tom, because I think that we might want to drop that 75 and maybe start at around 225 and go up, because I think if you go through Maple Ridge or any of these other places, if I look out on the real estate network, we've got houses selling, almost 500 and some over that.
Yeah, I looked at a little postage stamp house the other day, and the appraisal, the assessment was like 240. So
maybe we should.
I think it would also be helpful not just to have this, but just to have the total amount divided by the number of taxpayers in town, which is always a really hard number to nail down because some people own multiple parcels, and some are just pieces of land that are owned by someone in Florida. But I looked into doing mass mailings in town, and every door bulk delivery is about 800 or 1,880 households. So I feel like a fair number is about 2,000 households. So you could divide your $15 million by that to get about $7,000 per household.
Okay. Alrighty. And then we have not finalized our warrant articles yet. We do have draft language for them. I don't have them right in front of me. We looked at them earlier today, but obviously we're going to need the tax impact of the project we just discussed, tax impact of the budget we just we can take a look at that. We just looked at it. And of course, the capital reserve accounts, there's always a note saying there's no tax impact, but in reality, the fact that that money wouldn't be going back, it does have some tax impact, but it's not per DRA language. They don't view it that way. But we will be asking to put some funds into our capital reserves. But we haven't completely finalized that. But does that help? Is that sufficient for this page?
Yeah, I think so. And so then the next tab is the revenues.
Right. So what we do here is we just show all of the revenues, whether they be federal, whether they be state or local. So starting at the top, individuals that work in our building that wish to have their students attend the school pay tuition per the CBA. So the estimate there is $2,500. We don't have
Sorry,
any,
what's the CBA?
the teacher's contract, and that's in here as well. So if an employee of the district that's falls under the teacher's contract wants to have their student attend our school, they have to pay a tuition amount for that.
And I'm gonna assume that the tuition amount is $2,500.
You know what, I'd have to go back and actually look at the actual amounts in the contract. There's probably a couple in there. It's not anywhere near what the cost per student would be.
Yeah, because cost of students, what now, like 15,000?
Yeah, we're probably high 14, low 15. Interest income, we're scheduling 10,000. School lunch program, so income from the school lunch program. We're thinking 60,000 in revenue from that. And then we don't have any other items at this time for revenue that's local. And then going into revenue from the state sources, you see your special education aid, your child nutrition, and kindergarten aid, I think, clarify from Nate, but I believe that's just rolled into our overall aid now.
That is correct. It's all rolled in now.
And then federal sources, you get revenue for your.
Susan, I'm sorry, can I interrupt you? So would any of the state aid that we received for COVID, should that be in here?
Those are federal block grants that are passed to the state, and then the state passes them on.
But I guess the question would be if we're anticipating any funding coming in next year, which I don't know that we are.
Well, we already received, didn't the school receive COVID aid for this current school year? I know they got some prior to the end of the last school year, but.
Yes. And there have been analyses of the new federal situation. There are projections that are being made, but we don't have any hard numbers yet from the state as to what our block grant is going to be.
No, I guess, but shouldn't the money we've received be in here?
It should be in this year, correct?
Yeah.
Budgeted for next year, but.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry.
I would think we should update this schedule to include these block grants, just,
because it's not under 2020 and 21, but it's, from my understanding, that money has already been received this year.
From the CARES Act?
Right.
Yeah.
So Chris, we got 27,000 and change, and then we received, was it 159 for this last piece?
Some of that money went to the high school, so we got around 105 from that.
Okay. So we got 105, and it had to be spent by the 31st, I believe.
Yeah, not just spent, but all the materials had to be in the building by then. We were managed to utilize most of it, but we got word today that some of the two heavy machines for the maintenance that we had wanted for weren't going to make the deadline. So we had to cancel them. Otherwise, we would have been on the hook for the cost.
Okay. So Tim, just to clarify your point, you're saying that for 2021, for the year that we're in, actually, you'd like to see some of the CARES funding?
Well, I guess I'm not sure. Shouldn't it be there as a revenue? I guess I'm asking the question as to whether or not that should be there. Or if not, where would it be?
Yeah, we should check. Does that show unanticipated? How do we show that? We should just check into that. So it's new to us, Tim, so I don't.
It all came in as grants, so I'm not sure how that gets.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It came in as a grant. I think it's something we would have to run by DRA to see where they would ask us to put it, where they do their estimates there. But because they're grant related, it's a little bit different.
Okay.
There's still revenues though, so they should be reported as such.
So we'll look into that. That'll be a question we'll run with. Okay, and then I think the Medicaid reimbursement, I think Nate is best suited to discuss that. I don't see a number here, and I know there were concerns with that, so.
So the Medicaid reimbursement is the Medicaid to schools for anything that we do in our schools that we're required to do, but we do that falls outside of general education. Usually it's our OT, that we would look at some rehabilitative assistance. So your one-to-ones for behavior, things of that nature. The reason that we're having a hard time being able to look at what you would be getting for your aid there is it constantly has been changing. They've been fluxing it. As you remember last year, I told you we were better off not to anticipate anything because of the new rules. We didn't know what we were going to be able to bill for. We're still working on what that's going to look like. So at this point, you're better off not to have something in until we have 1 year of actual claiming with the new rules and regs under what is billable and who can sign off. It used to be that your school psychologist could sign off on multiple different services and your OT could sign off on certain things. You have to go through something now to get certified to be able to sign off. And we have been able to do that. But because what we have found is when we're going through and putting in for our billing, we're not sure what we're getting back yet until the remittance comes in. And that takes much longer. We're going to need a solid year of our reimbursements before we can anticipate what those numbers will look like again. They used to be much higher, but then they changed those rules as I had shared with you last year during the budget process. And we haven't had a full calendar year with the new rules.
But the new rules were a little bit, they almost went back to what they had, correct, about which parties could agree to services?
They have gone back. They've added more in there, but it's making it more challenging to track on what's going on because really where this is being the major issue for us to be able to track, and I'm trying to work with Co-Brown on this, is the high school level. We're doing a really good job at what we're doing at the elementary school level because we're able to keep track of all of our paraprofessionals with certain students. However, at the high school level, because the paraprofessionals change with each student on a regular basis due to the classes rotating, it's very hard to track and keep an analysis of what's going on. And we're trying to figure out how to do that more efficiently. And we're continuing to work on that. And what you see up there is you also have more rehabilitative assistants at the high school level where they're in their classes and we're able to bill for those services. But even if they have a one-to-one, they might have 6 different pairs that work with them. And that's the problem that we're trying to figure out on how we do that.
So if we don't put anything in there, will it impact us?
It does not. Nope. It doesn't impact you. If you get it in, it just gets returned into your surplus. It's just not, it goes back into where it's unanticipated funds. It just goes back. It doesn't do anything bad. The only problem is it can't be looked at to lower your tax right now, which is what it used to be able to do. We'd look at it, but we don't know what it is. And we don't want to put a number in there that's not appropriate. So the hope is 1 year with the updated changes, we'll be able to give you a better analysis of what you're getting back.
Okay. So like from an accounting perspective, and when you talk about making estimates, you have to have sufficient information to do it. You're telling us you don't have sufficient information to make an estimate.
Not at this point, not since they've changed those rules and they haven't given us a full year with it.
Okay.
Thank you.
And so that just kind of winds down all of the anticipated revenues. And then you get to your again, at the bottom, your adequacy grant. This is just the detail that kind of rolled into that summary sheet that we talked about. So the direct net assessment, or the amount that we'd have to raise, is 11,695,410. And then they do put an estimate out there for the 21-22 assessed valuation, moving it up to 812,274. So you can see that's not a huge increase. You probably wouldn't see another big bump until year 5 when we do another reval. But you can see that huge jump from 624 to 796. And I think, to Tom's point originally, that is in large part because these homes have had increased value, and plus we have new inventory. So I think that we should look at that chart that starts at 75 and start higher.
I mean, you could ask Avatar. They may be able to provide you a nice little histogram of house assessments in town.
Well, that sounds like a great idea. Because I was thinking I don't see that there'd be anything worth 150, but maybe there are some condominiums or something that would be. So I don't know.
The hard part is, what do you count, right? Because there's going to be a lot of little tiny empty parcels of land, and those are a tax parcel.
Any questions on the revenues? So I think there's no warrant articles yet, as Sue had explained earlier, which would be the next tab. I think we can skip through the staff list and health insurance rates unless anybody wants to review those in detail.
I had one question. I know I'm a board member, but under the benefits, I was just going to ask at our next meeting, what exactly is included in there? Because I know the insurance is a big piece of it, but I see small amounts for folks that probably aren't getting insurance. So I thought maybe we should just clarify exactly what's in that column, if you want. We could get that answer if anyone, wants to know what else is in there. Because I know the biggest chunk is insurance, but.
So then in the special education out of district,
That's Nate.
You have 2 placements there. We had talked about removing one as a safety net, and that was going to be in your capital reserve fund. There was one that we feel like could go at any point. We were going to budget for it, and we decided to hold off on the budget at this point and just utilize your capital reserves if it was needed. So those are your out of district placements at this point.
and then the next tab is transportation.
So if you look at your your transportation for special ed costs, you're looking at your out of district transportation, which is 2 different out of district transportations. You can see that Seacoast Learning Collab and Monarch, and then you can see your other special education transportations, which are in district and your Dover High Run. Again, these are your worst case scenarios. I am hoping that the Seacoast Learning Collaborative one will come down with a ride share, but as of right now, that's what you would have to budget for if we can't do a ride share.
Thanks, Nate.
Yeah.
And then the next 2 tabs are the collective bargaining agreements, or the contracts for both the teachers and the para contract. I think the para contract was just signed last year. But you can, again, peruse at your own leisure, those 2 contracts. The teacher's contract is set to be renegotiated in 2023, and the para is in 2022.
I had a question about that. Nate always likes to say that this was approved by the voters. When was that done was that done on the town ballot, or was that done at one of the meetings?
It was on a ballot. I've got the first session of the annual meeting packet. Let me just grab that.
It would have been the school district ballot last year for the teachers.
Yeah, it was
Right.
one of the warrant
Right.
articles, and they show 3 years of cost on it. So that definitely was on the ballot last year.
And when that was on the ballot, is like a lot of these things, when they get put on the ballot, it has a recommendation from the different boards.
Yep.
Was that put on the ballot with a recommendation from the school board?
The school board negotiated it and the school board recommended it.
Yeah, so I think in the future, it's a little disingenuous to say, well, the voters approved it, because the school board is the one that negotiated this contract that locks us into these outrageous raises, and the school board recommended it to the voters. I don't think it's realistic to expect that more than 1% of voters actually read through this 20-page teachers union contract, if it was even provided all that much in advance to voters. I don't think anyone has the time or the interest to do that.
Yeah, I don't
Shame on
disagree.
them.
We definitely negotiated it, and we recommended it, and we presented it to the budget committee, and we put it out. That's just the process, but absolutely the board supported it.
Did you guys see these things coming down the pike? I mean, so like 2 years ago, it was a 6.6% budget increase, and last year it was a 7.6% budget increase, and this year it's an 8.6% budget increase. That's you add that up cumulatively, that's 25% budget increase in 3 years, and it's heavily driven. Monica, I think, said 45-60% of that increase this year was due to these unavoidable salary increases and things that are all locked into these contracts. I mean, did you guys see that coming when you negotiated this?
I think when we were negotiating this, the thought was to try to get us into the middle of the pack on the average salary with the state. And I think that this contract did accomplish that. We're not on the high end, we're not on the low end, we're sitting sort of toward the middle at this point. So that was the thought process on it. In terms of some of the other costs that we incurred, I think that we didn't really consider the hit that Stratford leaving would have on us. I know we didn't realize that the New Hampshire retirement system would move the way it did. So I think those are the two big ones. And then, yeah, so those are the pieces I think that surprised us this year. But to your point, I think we're starting to see that we're in the average part of the state now. So when we renegotiate contracts, we should take that into consideration.
Well, yeah, and also the middle of New Hampshire range is not quite middle of the country range. The average cost per pupil in the nation is around 11 to 12,000. So it's substantially higher. Is there a way to get out of this contract? Do we have exit clauses?
Not that I'm aware of, Tom.
Also,
this is a collective bargaining state, Tom. I really think that, I understand the frustration. I've worked in right to work states as well, but really I think your beef is with the state legislature.
Oh yeah, and I'm talking to people right now. We have a bill going through right now for a right to work, so hopefully that'll get somewhere. But no, I mean the school board, negotiated this contract, and I think they did a poor job at it, and then they recommended it to the voters. So I don't think it's fair to just put the blame on the voters, because no one read it.
I don't think it's blaming. I don't think it's blaming at all. And the voters approved it. But the voters are informed people, and
the voters were largely ignorant. I doubt very many of them read a 20-page union contract. They probably, if anything, relied on the school board's recommendation at the bottom of that warrant article.
as is their right to do. And part of the reason why they elect a school board.
So it was, Tom, just to let you know, it was Article 3 on the warrant last year. And it has estimated increases each year of the total salaries and benefits. So for 2020 and 21, it was 93,569. For next year, it would be 95,761. And then the last year of the contract was 95,560.
This is total thousands of salary increases?
It's a total increase in salaries and benefits each year. So about $2,000 a year it goes up.
That's a lot less than what's in this budget that we're seeing, because I'm seeing 122,000 for teachers' salaries, 95,000 extra spending for retirements. So
I don't think the retirement isn't included in the benefits would be health insurance.
Sure.
One thing we did talk about this year is that when I was looking at it, I saw the 121 on line 1 of the budget for the increase. And I went back here and looked at this and said, we thought the increase would be 93. So that was reworked to place new hires differently on the grid, if you will. And that did change that number and it reduced it. But that is one thing that we did notice and we talked about, and Chris took a look at it. But again, I think, the school board will take responsibility for the contract.
So then the next tab is the enrollment report. And that's as of December 1st of 2020.
Chris, could you speak to that a little bit? Because that's different. We've had some movement, obviously, on enrollment that we think is probably not permanent.
I don't have that in front of me, just, I don't have.
I can speak a little bit to it, Stu. We were down 41 students this year over what we projected. And I believe that can be largely attributed to COVID. Found that younger students, we have had parents keeping them at home rather than enrolling them in the primary grades this year.
So the current enrollment's 507, or sorry, 509?
Chris, is that it current as of today?
The current enrollment in district in the building is 478. There are 31 home educated students, and that brings it up to 509. Typically, we look at numbers that are over the last several years between 510 and I think 535 is typical for in building.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
When is the next negotiation for the Co-Brown and Dover contracts?
Oh gosh.
We're 1 year away from Dover.
Yeah, because we're talking about that one. And then Co-Brown, I think they were both 7-year contracts. We can get those numbers for you for your next meeting.
Well, I just thought that was interesting because I remember, we had seen these are the figures from the State Department of Education. So enrollment looked pretty flat, between, like you said, about 510 students to 525 or so, I think was the max there. So it says now around, 509. So it just seems interesting that the new, school building addition, one of the biggest justifications there is this increase in enrollment. When the numbers just seem to indicate that enrollment's been pretty flat. And then I had also been looking through the town's capital investment plan. And in there, their report showed that under population change section, that population growth in town had slowed dramatically during the Great Recession, and projections of future growth are slower and lower than in the past. Population increased by 1,000 from 2000 to 2010. The NHOEP project that it'll take at least 25 years to add another 1,000 residents. And while that growth slows down, the town is aging rapidly. Population growth is not translating to a K-8 school enrollment, which is flat. And there's also a graph here that I don't know if I can put up. It's showing the downward trend in births to Nottingham mothers, and really there's a statewide decline in enrollment in elementary schools.
That's from last year's CIP?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, so it doesn't look like enrollment is going to be going up too much, at least according to the town's own research.
Right.
So I just question the.
As of right now, the town is not, we're foreseeing that there could be a possibility of 60 new houses next year in town. So take that over 5 years.
Yeah. Assuming the economy doesn't crash.
Well, assuming we stay the same. I think we'll hit that 1,000 residents increase well before 20 years. Just we could probably see that probably in maybe 7 years.
Yeah, well,
I'm not being argumentative. I'm just throwing it out there. The way that the past housing has gone, and what the developments and the planning board is looking at.
Yep, it does seem to be the way it's going, but it, you know, there's boom bust cycles, and it's always seems to be booming the biggest right before the bust. So it's always, you know, we don't really know for sure till it happens, I guess.
No, but what you're going to happen to see, again, hypothetically, but if our tax rate stays as low as it does, the property values and people that are larger owners are going to want to sell that property because the developers are going to want to come in town because you can ask for a bigger price of a house with a lower tax rate. So, and we're in the seacoast. So if we keep the tax rate, which I hope we keep it low, but I don't think, I don't see our growth slowing down. And again, that's just my opinion from what I've known from my years of sitting, working with the town, but that's.
But also getting back to the school, if that's what we're talking about right now. I mean, the school's 25 years old, so enrollment over the last 25 years has increased significantly. Otherwise, they wouldn't be teaching kids in the hallway.
But when we built it 25 years ago, wasn't it? I heard that it was designed for 600 students.
I have no idea. I just know that the population has increased over that 25 years, which is why I think that something needs to be done.
Yeah, I think it had 486 or 496 back then. I do have a spreadsheet somewhere where I pulled all this data. And at that New Hampshire OEP site, we looked at that on the planning committee when we were looking at the withdrawal. And I could swear, again, I don't have that report right in front of me. I hadn't expected to talk about that, but I think definitely we showed a faster growth rate than Northwood and Stratford. And I think, I don't want to throw out a number, but I think it was over 10%. So maybe we'll pull that out of the report and we can share that. But I think at the end of the day, it is true that it's really hard to figure out where you're going to be. But I know we have an awful lot of new developments, and I see, you know, I think 5 years from now, 4 years from now, whatever it may be, you may see some more. Definitely, you're going to see more enrollment in that school. But we can pull that stuff that we looked at, and Carol can show you your next meetings.
We definitely had a higher growth rate than the surrounding towns.
Yeah, I think Rockingham County in general, there's this sense that the Manchester, kind of metro Manchester area, and then heading out to the seacoast, and Rockingham County in particular is growing faster than some of the other areas in the state.
I can say as a realtor that of the three towns that we're talking about, Nottingham provides a lot more positive things for people that are buying, better location in terms of commuters, you know, 101. And a lot of the families moving into town are younger families and they have kids. So that's a fact.
So Sue, yeah, if you're able to get us those numbers, that would be great.
Yeah, because I think, you know, we should look at what the town, I think it's fair to look at what the town had talked about last year and see if anything's changed and what some of the numbers look like now. We can get that for you.
And then the next tab is the SAU budget, which this budget is negotiated by the joint school boards, which was Northwood, Stratford, and Nottingham. So this is not something that I guess the budget committee controls, but it's in here.
It is, yeah, it hits us. It is an increase for us though, because of the apportionment and the fact that it's only 2 parties now.
Yeah, I think that's the important piece of the committee. If you're reviewing this document, the total appropriations, the total budget looks like it's a decrease over last year, which it may be, but we're responsible for more now, which is why on our actual budget, you see that large increase for SAU costs. And then if there's no questions there, the next one is the preschool budget for the SAU. And then the last tab, if nobody has any other questions, is are the CIP, the capital improvement program for the school. So Sue, I'm guessing these are sort of some of the drafts of the potential warrant articles that you're considering, the school board's considering?
These are the Mr. Sousa goes through and these are the narrative items for items that we would put into the CIP, and we need to meet with the CIP committee and we'll put a quick summary sheet together. But these are the things that we think that we'll be doing over the next 5, 6 years. And we try to rate them in terms of their.
We did have a CIP meeting, but we just didn't have a representative from the school board there that night.
Right. So I talked to Tony about that, and so he's going to reschedule. And Kathy's your rep, but if she's not available, we'll make sure that someone's there, and we will have a summary sheet of all these items.
Great, thank you.
Are there any questions from the committee on that information from the binder? I know it was a lot of documents to go through. All right, well, thank you, Sue, Monica, and Chris, and Nate.
Oh, I had a question about
Oh,
just the
I'm
budget
sorry, go
in
ahead.
general, not what was in the binder. Back earlier, at the beginning of this month, Monica gave us a proposed budget that was, I think it was like 7.5%, and she had told us that her and the school board were working hard to get that down to a 4% increase. And then shockingly at the next meeting, we were presented with a proposed budget that was up to 8.6%. So I don't know if now that Susan's here and Monica's here, maybe you can let us know a little bit what happened to, you know, trying to get that down to 4%, how it ended up going up even higher.
That was my error in the initial budget conversation that I had had with the school board and my understanding. And I think I communicated that to Tim to share with the committee that that was purely my error.
I mean, was there an effort to reduce the budget increase down to 4% or something like that? Is that something that was being discussed, or was it not a concern?
That was one of the numbers in the initial conversations that we were having, and in my note taking and preparation for you all were the first group that I delivered a budget presentation to. I had included that in my own notes, and I own that completely. That was purely and simply my error.
I think though, when we start the budget process, I don't know that I don't know about the 7.5% one. I did see one that was around 10. But I know that when we first talked about it, and we thought a reason, it would be nice to have a 4.5%. That seems to be what people are always trying to target. And then as we got into it, we saw the 181,000 hit on SAU, 527 on high school tuition. We had 88, I think, 88,000 on special education transportation. Preschool costs went up 25, I believe. I'm just back of the napkin here. I apologize. And then the New Hampshire retirement number was, I think, 140, 130, somewhere in there. So then when you added all that in, there was no way that we could hit that 4.5. So that's the honest history on what happened there.
Yeah. As for targeting a 4% increase, that shouldn't be your goal. I mean, your goal should be 2% maximum. That's the rate of inflation. If you manage to control budget increases by 2%, then the idea is that the amount of taxes that people are going to be paying is going to rise at the same rate as their paychecks rise. The school budget has been rising at 6.7%, 7.6%, and now the proposed budget here is 8.6%. These are, triple, quadruple the rate of inflation year after year after year in this town, which means that the proportion of people's income that is being taken from them in the form of school taxes is rising. It is becoming a much, much larger portion of their paycheck is now being taken for this school tax. And I think it's important to recognize the numbers we're talking about here when you're talking about increasing the budget here. This 8.6% increase is it's about $1.4 million increase. That's about $700 per household increase. That's a lot of money for most people. And that's on top of, you have $14-15 million total budget here. That's divide that by your 2,000 households. That's $7,000. That's a significant portion of most people's income. And that's an unavoidable expense. They pay it or they lose their house. So, I think in the future, instead of being hopeful that you can hit a 4% increase and thinking that it's good enough to get an 8 to 9% increase, maybe try targeting for 2%. That's what taxpayers can actually bear. And they've been squeezed pretty dry the last 5, 6, 7 years in this town. The tax rate has skyrocketed.
Okay.
Are there any other questions on the budget or the binder that was presented? So this is the last time we'll see this until our hearing, which is scheduled for the school board. Again, that's, I believe, on January 14th. No, I'm sorry, January 12th is for the school, 14th is for the town. And then again, I encourage you to add to your calendar January 13th for the bond hearing for the project that we've discussed this evening. Any other questions? Well, if not, we will let
What date
Monica.
was the bond hearing? What date was the bond hearing?
Wednesday, January 13th. I believe it's at
Thank you.
6:30.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Monica, Chris, and Nate.
Thank you. Happy New Year, everybody.
Happy New
Thank
Year.
you,
Thank
you too.
you.
Thank you.
Have a wonderful night, everybody.
Yep,
You
Happy
too.
New Year.
Bye, guys.
So the next item on our agenda was the meeting minutes from the last two meetings. I have not had an opportunity. I know that Lorraine sent out some updated minutes at 1 o'clock. I have not had an opportunity to review those. I don't know if anybody else has, but I have not.
I reviewed them, and also I was talking to Lorraine. I think in the future I'm gonna work with her to get her moved to a Google Docs style online, collaborative editing thing, so that we don't have to, if I make a change to the meeting minutes, I have to send it to Lorraine and she incorporates it and she sends that, new version out to everybody. That can be quite burdensome. So I'm going to see if I can help her to use Google Docs, so we just kind of have one online document that we can all change. I think that'll simplify things.
Yeah, well, before you do that, Tom, we have to, so we actually moved to this process about a year and a half ago. How we used to do it is we would sit in our budget committee meeting for about 45 minutes to an hour going through the committee, the notes, and actually add the edits at that point. Well, when we had looked at adding, because, with Word, you can add all the comments and each person has their own initials with Word. Well, the problem with that is that's considered a public meeting because all of the committee members are commenting. So that legally can raise issues for us. I'm happy to revisit that. So before you go through showing Lorraine how to do that, I think for now we should continue with how we're doing it. We've only got a few meetings left. And then I can check with the state and find out, again, the reasoning behind. I do remember it was because it was only a year and a half ago. We had looked at doing it that way and we were told not to.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I never considered that.
But yeah, because I agree. I think it'd be a great idea if we can just put everything in one spot so that she can then, because it would be easier for her too. So I would move that we review these minutes. I just haven't had an opportunity to review them. If we can table this until our meeting next Thursday.
I move we table them to next Thursday.
I'll second.
Is that all of them, or does that include did you get the chance to see the December 3rd one? That one's getting, because that's getting kind of old at this point. I don't know when.
I've seen that one.
Is there a deadline that we're supposed?
I'm just cooperating with what other people want. So
yeah, I'm just wondering, is there a deadline? Do we need to get minutes posted so that the public knows what we were talking about in a reasonable amount of time?
No, we have to. If somebody requests meeting minutes, we have to provide them. And they're supposed to be available within 5 days, which we have a draft available of those minutes that we could provide to somebody if they needed them. But the actual approved by the committee that needs to get posted on the website, we try to get it up as quickly as possible. But as long as we're able to provide to the public a draft of our meeting minutes, which we do have a draft that we could provide if somebody needed them.
Can we approve the December 3rd ones?
Yeah, those I thought Lorraine had sent both the 3rd and the 10th out today.
Right. There were changes to the 3rd that she sent out today. So
yeah, so
they were less than the other ones. But if nobody's got the opportunity to actually review those changes, then I'm in agreement that we should table it.
Okay.
So Sandra made the motion and John seconded, and there was discussion. Any more discussion on it?
So we'd be doing them at the January 7th meeting then?
Yes. And if anybody has any comments, if they can be sure to review what Lorraine sent today as quickly as possible, because we do have a holiday coming up and then a weekend. So I don't want Lorraine having to work all through the holiday week, but so if you can get those edits to her as soon as possible, that'd be great. And I'll be sure to do the same.
Just a suggestion to people, if they've reviewed a version of the minutes previously, you can do a word compare and see the changes that were made.
Thanks, John.
There's also a nice website, diff checker. If you don't have Word, you can just copy and paste text in there. It'll show you the differences.
Is that an app, Tom, or is it just a website?
It's just a website. It's just got 2 text boxes side by side, and you just copy and paste in your stuff. It'll highlight changes between them. I find it very, very helpful. It's diffchecker.com, DIFF checker.
So we had a motion by Sandra, second by John, and I'll just go down if we can get approval.
Do we need a motion?
your
I mean,
name.
we're just not doing something, right?
It was on the agenda and we're moving it. So technically we should vote on moving the minutes approval till next week. So Tom Bukovitz,
Sure.
John Decker, you were,
Yeah,
I say
yes.
yes. Sean Green,
Yes.
Sandra Jones,
Yes.
Michelle,
Yes.
Tom LeVay,
Yes.
Carol,
Yes.
John Moran,
Yes.
and Jim Stevens.
Yes.
Thank you. Any other questions before we look to close out our final meeting of 2020?
Whatever happened to getting Excel spreadsheets from the school? It seems like they're really putting up a lot of resistance. Said they're asking the attorney about it.
So
Yeah.
they, we asked the school board attorney about what the requirements are and also recommendation. The concern, and I don't know the full history of this, but I think it has happened in the past, is that if we provide a Excel format that can be manipulated, it can then be altered and distributed to the public without approval of this committee or the board. So I think if we had assurance from this committee that it would not be distributed beyond this group and not altered and distributed, that we'd be more comfortable providing it. But otherwise, I think the Excel format that he provided today can be filtered or sorted. I didn't try to do that. But you can, I think, resort the lines. You just can't alter the lines.
Well, I mean, you're giving us a PDF. You know, I mean, I was able to take this PDF and convert it into a Excel spreadsheet. I
We
mean,
actually gave an Excel today. I think she sent the Excel. Did you send that out, Tim? Yeah.
Yeah, I did.
It's just a locked Excel.
Yeah.
So the problem with the locked ones, even if you click on a cell, it doesn't even hold
Can't
your
copy
place.
it. Yeah, you can't do any data
You
analysis.
can't do anything with it.
So I think if we have assurance from the committee that it won't be altered and distributed, there would be a greater comfort level with providing it.
wait, Tim, you did send out I never got a Excel spreadsheet file.
I don't think I did either.
I didn't see it either, Tim, so it may have gotten lost or something. I have.
Let me see.
Well, hang on. Unless
It
it's
came
part
from
of this
Glenn.
email.
Tim, I'm not sure.
Yeah, no, yeah, I'll send it out today. I apologize. I thought I had emailed it out this morning with the other materials. Yeah, and I don't see it in my sent mail.
But yes, it would be really helpful to have a live Excel copy so that we can look at doing our own summaries and percentages and things like that. You know, just as a working document.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think from the past at least 3 meetings or so, some of the discussion would have been helped out substantially by being able to clarify some of those questions and put the numbers to them in that working document.
Yeah, and I really don't understand this protectiveness over it because quite honestly, you know, I copied and pasted this PDF document, put it, you know, imported it into Excel and basically created, you know, a workable unlocked Excel version. And I'm fairly certain that I can take whatever locked Excel version and unlock it and then send that out to John if you guys don't want to provide it. And this is public information. I don't understand why the school board is being so guarded in providing a spreadsheet to people.
I don't think it's an unusual approach. The school
I think
board
it's
attorney-
very unusual.
And part of the concern that I have is that, there's obviously different versions with different date stamps each time we make a change. So keeping version control over which one is the most current is important as well, I think.
Sure, but that's on your end. I mean, you have your own internal document storage. You're not getting a Excel file from me or some random person off the street and then saving it over top of, your real documents. So I would just ask that you just send out an unlocked Excel spreadsheet so that John and anybody else who wants to pick through it can do so easily.
So I think for the final version for the public hearing, if the school board is okay with it, we'll
Yeah, but I mean, at that point, we don't really have any chance to do any input or anything, right? I mean,
well, our
the whole
next
point
meeting
is
our next meeting is on the 6th, and I think the public hearing is on the 12th.
Yeah.
So if we had decided at this meeting on the 6th to send it, it would be the final version, and you'd have it before the 12th. The public hearing is the last time that you'll look at the proposed budget. But I guess it sounds like you don't need it, because if you have another workaround to make your own, then you don't need the unlock.
Well, it's not going to look all pretty. The formatting is off a little bit. For John's enjoyment, please send him a nice clean one.
I would still like it. I'm sure if I wanted to hack and whack, I could, but that would be a waste of my time. And I honestly don't have time to waste.
Well, and this request is like over a month old, I think, at this point, right?
Yeah, I think at every meeting we've made this request.
I think for John, it's actually 10 years old.
Oh, at least. I mean, yeah, it's crazy.
I think Gene wants to say something.
Oh, Gene?
Yeah, a member of the public. I suggest that spreadsheet that's being held back is eligible for release under 91A as a governmental record. And I don't, as most of you, I don't understand the reluctance of presenting it. The fact that somebody can alter the document is not unusual. Anything I get that I request from the town, I can alter it. So you have to have some faith in the people that if somebody goes out there and lies and changes something that's presented, it's wrong, it's illegal. So I once again, I do not understand the reluctance to release it when if you put in a 91A request, it would be compulsory to supply it. Thank you.
And that was what the advice from the school board attorney is, that it's not required to release it in an unlocked format. And I'm fine with going back to the school board and asking again if we can release it before the public hearing. I just wanted to explain what the concern is.
As all attorneys, it's important how the question is asked to the answer that you receive. And I submit that if I put in a 91A request, are you on the school board?
I am.
If I put in a 91A request, would you honor it? Or you have to.
It's not up to me to decide what format to release documents for 91A.
Can you release it in a, well, I'm not going to argue with you. It's ongoing trying to get information out of the school department. It's very frustrating. Thank you.
Thanks, Carol. So just keep us posted
Yep.
on that after the meeting next Wednesday. Any other items for discussion? All right. With that, could I get a motion to close our? Gene, did you have another question? Okay. Could I get a
I'll make a
to-
motion that we adjourn tonight's meeting.
Seconded.
Okay.
Okay. Any discussion? I'm assuming no. Tom Bukovitz,
Yay.
John Decker.
Yay.
I'd say yes. Sean Green,
Yes.
Sandra Jones,
Yes.
Michelle King,
Yes.
Tom LeVay,
Yes.
Carol,
Yes.
John Moore, John's frozen.
I think he was just muted.
John Moore, you're muted.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, thank you. Jim Stevens?
Yes.
Great. Thank you all. Have a happy and safe new year, and we will see you a week from Thursday, January 7th. I'll keep you posted on what we have from the town as far as the highway costs. I'll work with you, John, on that, and then we'll communicate as to whether or not, I don't think we need to have that meeting just to talk to our new police chief unless we feel that's important. But so then if not, we'll see you on January 12th at the public hearing.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Everybody take care.
Thanks all.